Happy Friday, everybody. Okay, so today is Louis Day. I love Louis the 14th. I love teaching him. He's just a lot of fun. And so we do an entire day talking about Louis because he can fill up 45 minutes pretty easy with his amazing extravagance and just all the things that he does. So that is what today is all about. So if you were to ask like any history teacher, I found out earlier today when a student of mine even Googled it, like if you say, which king is the best example of an absolute monarch, it is Louis the 14th of France. He is going to come up again and again and again as the answer. And it's because he takes the idea of the king, the monarch, being the absolute center of everything to a whole nother level. He even nicknames himself and creates this like myth around himself called the Sun King. Like, so he calls himself the Sun King. And it's not just a matter of like, I am the Sun King. I'm talking like he has the sun like painted around him. He has images of the Greek god Apollo all over his palace in portraits. And I mean, like, and of course, it's to symbolize that the world revolves around him, like France revolves around him. I am the light, I am the life of my entire kingdom. Everything revolves around me. And so, this just should give you an idea of the type of personality we're dealing with here. So he is King of France starting in the 1650s, and he will be King of France until 1715 at his death at the very ripe old age, especially for that time, of 76. So he's going to be around in France for a while and make quite the historical splash. So with that being said, let's kind of look at his life, right? Right? What did he do? So we kind of have to start literally with his father, Louis the 13th, to kind of get an idea of, why Louis turns into the person he turns into, like why he has this mentality and things like that. So Louis the 13th, his dad, comes to the throne as a small child, as will Louis. Louis will be like 4 when his dad dies. And so, of course, when you are that young, it's not like you're capable of being king. So usually it was the queen and a top advisor, political advisor, that pretty much ran the country until the boy came of age to be king. And so within French history, with Louis the 13th, your main top minister that is a huge influence was Cardinal Richelieu. And of course, when I say cardinal, all students think, oh, the bird? No, no. Okay, these are your top ranked Catholic priests, okay, that are involved, again, not just in the church, but in the politics of these kingdoms and these monarchies that are tied to the Catholic Church. And the French monarchy is definitely tied to the Catholic Church. If you will remember from lesson 1, I taught you about Henry of Navarre, who becomes Henry IV, and he is actually a Protestant that converts to Catholicism to essentially try to keep the peace within France, because he understands that the majority of France is still Catholic. But out of the 7% of people in France that had converted to Protestantism, you have to remember, I also explained that was like 40 to 50% of the nobility. So there's kind of an issue taking place with Louis the 13th's reign and Louis the 14th's reign in the nobility and the political dynamics of France, because you've got nobles with a lot of power and a lot of money and a lot of land who are Protestant, and yet your king and the court is Catholic, with Catholic cardinals essentially running the show. So this kind of, this creates some issues. And, Richelieu, it sees the Huguenots, the French Protestants, he sees them as a threat, and he hates the Edict of Nantes, which of course gave Protestants, political rights and, freedom from persecution. So Cardinal Richelieu looks at them as a threat, looks at the Edict of Nantes as a threat. And Louis XIII, of course, feels this way as well, because Richelieu is a huge part of the, political conversation around Louis XIII. So they even have this huge spy network trying to uncover and crush any type of plotting or conspiracies against the crown. But when Louis XIII dies, of course, at a pretty young age, 41, his son, Louis XIV, the Louis we're talking about the most today, is only 4. So his mom and a man named Cardinal Mazarin become your top people running the country until Louis XIV comes of age. Well, Mazarin is, just like Richelieu in a lot of ways, pretty suspicious, obviously hates Protestantism, but he's also pretty power hungry, wants to really tighten up the central monarchy of France and give and funnel all the power into the king. And so it's not a big surprise that Louis XIV is actually, once he does get old enough to become king, he's going to revoke the Edict of Nantes and take all of those political rights away, and military rights and freedoms and stuff away from Protestants, and say nope, we are Catholic, period, end of story. And so this is going to kind of be an issue, but Louis XIV, when he's a young boy, experiences what is known as the Le Fronde. And this is a time when Protestants try to overthrow the French monarchy when he's little, and there's a big war, and they kind of come after the royal family when they're at the palace there in Paris. And so from a young age, he gets a very violent kind of image in his mind of Protestants and what they're capable of. And so he just squashes them as soon as he becomes king, very much with the prodding and help of Cardinal Mazarin. But, when Louis is a young man, teenager up into his early 20s, he is your quintessential playboy. I'm talking parties all the time, girls all the time, does not really take on his role as king, because he kind of feels hey, Mazarin is doing good. He's kind of got everything lined out, and I want to play while I can. And he does. He does it pretty darn well. He is a sincere playboy. But Mazarin is going to die in 1661, and Louis is 23 at the time, so he's king, and he's old enough at this point to take on his responsibilities, and he does. He steps up and says, "All right, I guess I better grow up." And but when he steps into his role as king after Mazarin's death, oh man, he definitely steps up. So again, he fosters the image and the myth and the narration around himself as Sun King. And he's writing out, we're going to kind of just pause for a minute and talk about really the most incredible, most amazing palace ever built, which was built by Louis XIV and is your bell ringer for today. And that is the palace at Versailles. So Louis is out writing, and he hates Paris. He doesn't trust Paris. He doesn't trust the people in Paris. He does not like the palace at the Tuileries, which is where the royal family lives, which is now the Louvre Museum there in Paris. That's where the royal family's its original palace. Anyway, so he goes out to his dad's hunting lodge, which, when you think of images of hunting lodges, you think of like log cabins or like a camper trailer or something like that. No, this is seriously just a small, it's still massive to the average person, but it's a small castle. It's a small palace. It's just a quaint little palace. So it's at Versailles. So there's a little village called Versailles about 30 miles outside of Paris. And this is where his father had built this hunting lodge. And he would go out there regularly to get away from the Paris scene. Well, he gets there and he sees this vision, and he's, of course, to him, it's God sent him this vision of this amazing palace that he is now going to build to get the royal family out of Paris and create like this whole new palace center and dynamic to the crown. So he begins building it, and Versailles is established. So I have actually been to Versailles, and there's seriously nothing like it. I'm going to back up actually, and I want you to look at that top picture there. It's just like a stock Google photo of the Hall of Mirrors, which is what makes Versailles pretty famous. Versailles is famous for a lot of things, but I would say the main thing people go to Versailles to see is the Hall of Mirrors. So when you walk in on one side of the hallway, which it's more like a ginormous ballroom, but Versailles is so huge and so big and so extravagant that no, it's a hallway. So you walk into one side of the hall, floor to ceiling, gorgeous arched windows. And on the other side of the hallway, you have floor to ceiling arched windows, of course, to complement mirrors to complement the windows. So, of course, the whole point of this is the sunlight streams in from the windows, hits the mirrors, creates this gorgeous reflection, right, of all of the gardens and everything that are outside of the windows and also the sunlight. So this whole room is just basked in sunlight and reflected sunlight. And then at the top of the ceiling, it is just these beautiful crystal chandeliers that are also sparkling and reflecting the sunlight. Well, you can guess whose bedrooms are off the Hall of Mirrors? The king and queen's. And so, of course, the whole imagery that he's trying to create by designing the Hall of Mirrors is that when he walks out in the morning and greets everybody for the day, the Sun King himself is glowing in sunlight. And, guys, if you'll really take a look at this image, I mean, that's the ceiling all trimmed and highly ornate crown molding and gold and these incredible murals of not just like Christian depictions, but because he was the Sun King, he had murals and statues of, again, the Greek god Apollo all over the place. Images of the sun are painted all over the place. Because again, you have to have all of the imagery that goes around this creation, this of I am the center of the universe. So the bottom left picture here on the screen, if you'll see, that's my image of the Hall of Mirrors. And of course, it's nowhere near as good as the professional photo I just showed you. But I want you to look and see the heads of the people at the bottom of the photo, just so that you can get an understanding of the scale of this hallway. Okay. And right above my head, if you'll look at the pictures, that's his bedroom. That's his bed. Gold crown molding, ornate. I mean, everything is to the nines. I can't even put into words like just how amazing this place is. The picture of the lake right there in the center, that is Apollo and his horses and his chariot coming up out of the water. It's unlike anything I've ever seen. I spent an entire day at Versailles and walked around the grounds, and it's truly just a remarkable place to go and visit. If I will warn you, however, that if you ever make it to Europe and you want to go see all of the palaces and castles and things, which I mean, Yeah, you should. They're a lot of fun to go see, along with all of the cathedrals that are just drop dead gorgeous. But which there's a cathedral that he built. You can kind of see it actually to the left of my head. Like if you can kind of see like the flying like buttresses that create that Gothic effect. That's actually the cathedral there at Versailles. Because there's no need to ever leave Versailles. Why would you want to? Everything is there. You've got a lake, several lakes, actually huge lakes. You have massive grounds to hunt on. He actually builds a forest that's beautiful. All the lines are like, all the trees are like perfectly lined up in a row. It's really quite something to go walk through it now because the trees are so tall, knowing that like he engineered all of this. And anyways, like I said, if you go to Europe and you want to go see all the palaces and castles, number one, I sure hope that you do. Number two, save Versailles for last. Because I can assure you that once you see Versailles and you tour Versailles, every single palace and every single castle from there on out will like pale in comparison. You'll walk in and be like, wow, this is a dump. I mean, like, but I mean, it's not. Obviously, it's castles still. But I mean, seriously, compared to Versailles, it's going to feel like a dump. I mean, like once you see it, I mean, it's just, it's difficult to put into words. I challenge you to Google images of Versailles so that you can, again, try to get an understanding of it. And again, how incredibly ornate and extravagant and just breathtakingly gorgeous it is. It's also huge. Okay. I mean, this place is gigantic. So he builds this. Okay. And he expects his entire court and all of the nobility to regularly be at Versailles. And so, why does he do this? Well, he does this because he wants to keep everybody under his thumb. He wants to keep everybody watched so that he knows that no one is conspiring against him. And he also wants to keep them, like preoccupied so that they don't even have time to plot against him. Like, hey, we're having a ball followed by a party, followed by like some other reception thing. It's nonstop. We're having a play tonight that, later after that, we're going to have, party continued. The next, I mean, it's just constant activity, constant stuff. And it all revolves around him. He is actually the king that will also create like the dressing of the king, the waking of the king. I mean, he made it so that the nobles vied for his attention in his every moment. He did not lift a finger. I mean, literally, it was considered an honor to like pull the drapes back in the morning so that the sunlight basked him in bed and woke him up. When he got up out of bed, he literally got up and just stood there with his arms out because it was an honor to get to dress the king or be at the dressing of the king in the mornings. It was even an honor to sit next to him when he was going poo. I mean, like I'm talking every little thing was, an honor to get to be around him or get to experience this moment in his day. So seriously, when I say like the Sun King, he wanted the world to revolve around him. He made it so that the world and the life at Versailles and the court at Versailles truly revolved around his every move, every waking moment. Which is the reason why he is the most and best example of an absolute monarch. I mean, he makes every little thing that he does, even to the point of going to the bathroom, special. And so kind of another really interesting story about Louis the 14th actually revolves around his little brother, Philippe. And there is a television show called Versailles. There are 3 seasons to it. And I'm saying this wholeheartedly right now and warning you, like it's very risque. It's pretty, like there's some times when it's pretty raunchy. So I'm not telling you to go watch it. I'm just telling you that it's out there, because I have students consistently ask me, like, well, is there something other than documentaries that, that you can tell us about? And so that's why I always try to show you movie trailers or television show trailers, and this is totally appropriate. I'm not showing you, like, if you watch this, it doesn't show anything like terrible. And so I'm just trying to kind of point you in that direction if you're interested in it, but just fair warning, like, if you're not allowed to watch like rated R things, like, don't watch it. But the thing is if you do watch the trailer to this, you're going to see his brother, and you're going to be going, what is going on with that guy? So I need to tell you the story of Philippe. So when Philippe was born, there was a fear by their mother that two boys could potentially, like, result in, conflict for the throne. And she didn't want Louis to ever feel like emasculated by his little brother or threatened by his little brother. So Philippe was actually raised pretty much as a girl. They dressed him in dresses. He played with dolls. Like, I mean, it was basically, you're a girl from the time that he was born. And so, no big shocker, when he gets older, he identifies more as a girl and likes boys, even though he is a boy, because he's essentially been raised in this capacity his whole life, so that his brother would never feel threatened or, again, emasculated. But you kind of feel sorry for Philippe, because once they are older and it's clear, like, okay, Louis king, everything has worked out as planned. They're like, okay, Philippe, time for you to be a man, time for you to be like a prince of France and get married and have babies and go to war and, like, do the whole man thing. Well, of course, I mean, that's not how his brain works, because he hasn't, he's been completely programmed to the opposite. But he does his due diligence, and he marries, and they have children, and he does that. But of course, he also has a male lover for his entire existence, and he very regularly cross dresses and puts on dresses and wigs and wants to be a female. And so you would think that Louis would then try to, like, almost hide his brother, right? Like, I mean, here we are, we're highly tied to the Catholic Church. He's this powerful, very, I'm the French king, the world revolves around me. And you would think that he would want to hide his brother away. And he doesn't. To Louis's credit, Philippe is always at court with Louis. He is one of his most trusted advisors. Now, don't get me wrong, like, they have their fair share of issues. Can you imagine the amount of resentment Louis or Philippe at times felt towards his older brother? And so don't be wrong, it's not like they have, like, just this perfect relationship. Most siblings don't. But, Louis, however, totally protects Philippe and, like, who he is and his lifestyle and, like, how he operates, because at the end of the day, Louis, like, it's really kind of my fault, even though the mom's the one that did it. But I mean, it's my fault that he is the way that he is. And so, when you watch this trailer again, you're going to see Philippe, dressed as a girl, and you're going to be kind of like, who is that? What he's a brother? Like, what is going on? And so that's what it is. And I even challenge you to Google pictures. Like, if you Google, like, the portrait of Louis XIV and Philippe as children, there's a very famous portrait of both of them where Louis is in, they're both little boys, and Louis is in, the heir to the throne boy, red and gold outfit. And then next to him is what you would assume would be his little sister. Philippe is in that portrait with him wearing, like, a bonnet with a lavender, like, purple dress on. And now there's also, I don't want you to get confused. There's images where where it looks as if like Louis is also wearing dresses, but he's not. Like you have to understand the royal garments of the day. Like the times where it looks as if Louis is wearing like also girly clothes, you have to pay attention to like the colors and how he's wearing it. And because that he's actually wearing clothes that were symbolic of an heir to the throne and the main prince of France. But anytime you see Philippe, he is in clothes and garments really symbolic of a princess, not a prince, and again is oftentimes wearing colors that are considered like the girl colors, not the boy colors. And so it's just a very interesting dynamic. And the court of Louis XIV was just a constant party, really. And so, anyways, that's the trailer to Versailles, the first season, if you would like to watch it. So here we go. Louis, of course, sets up court where government has to obey his every wish. The nobles vie for his attention. He's trying to constantly have a party and keep them distracted with all kinds of things. And so you're sitting here, and he also is waging war. If you're Sun King, you have to prove yourself not just amongst your own people, but out in the world, right? Well, how in the world is he paying for all of this? Okay, my God, you're building the biggest, most extravagant palace that was ever created. You're constantly having parties and balls, and you are hosting almost the entire nobility of France most of the time because you want to make sure you've got your thumb over them. At the same time, waging war. And what? Well, part of the reason why during the height of his power and during the height of war and building and all of this, the reason why he continually has this money flowing in is because he really has an incredible accountant. He has an amazing financial manager by the name of Jean-Baptiste Colbert. He very strictly follows the principles, as we've talked about from Unit 7, of mercantilism, balance of trade. He raises taxes on foreign goods. And raises, unfortunately, also the taxes of his own, of the people to try to pay for all of this. Now, by the end of Louis's life, France is going to be not so great financially because of all of this. But in the thick of it, he's got the right man funneling money the way it needs to go in order to essentially support his habits of war and building and extravagance. So the Sun King, Louis XIV, he was married to a Spanish princess, Maria Teresa, and they have plenty of kids, but unfortunately his kids don't survive him. Now they end up having kids of their own, but they die in like adulthood and stuff. And his great grandson is actually going to be the one that succeeds him and becomes Louis XV. He also, yes, he's married to her, but really his entire life, he was known for having, guys, up to like 7 to 10 mistresses at a time, very open about it, very openly, like having that happen. And so, again, just the court at Versailles was unlike anything any of us could ever possibly imagine. But at the end of his life, he seems to start, I guess, reflecting, and he starts becoming humbled and realizing that maybe I didn't do such a great job as king, because he's actually quoted in telling his great grandson and his successor, like, don't be like me. He essentially says, don't take care of your people and don't wage war and don't build these extravagant things and just don't emulate me at all. And so at the end of his life, again, he seems to have remorse about how he has acted as king of France and as the Sun King. So This is the official biography from the biography channel of Louis XIV. It's just 5 or so minutes long. I challenge you to watch it because if you notice in one of the pictures, he is wearing high heels. This is another fun fact about Louis. Louis XIV invented the high heel. So if you'll look at what they're wearing, of course, boys that are watching this are going, ew, because they're like short little bloomers and like white stockings and like high heeled pointy boots that look really girly. Um, all of this was what royal men wore that showed them off and was considered very good looking at the time. I know now we're like, ugh, but back then, oh, girls, you'd have had posters of Louis on your wall. He was like, whew, he was good looking, had all the fashion. He was cute for the day. And so, ladies, when you wear heels, of course, the muscles in your legs are more defined. Your butt sticks out, right? And you go work it. Well, he's the one that invented it because originally in history, it was the men who showed their legs off. And so he wanted the muscles in his legs to be more defined, and he also wanted to appear taller. So he told the guy that makes his shoes, like, I want you to put like a block on the heel of my shoe. And in a lot of the paintings, not pictures, but paintings of Louis, you will see him like with his foot turned, like showing off his shoes and showing off the heel of his shoe because he invented that, and he wants his legs and his footwear to be front and center there so that everybody can be like, ooh, look at that. So, when you're watching this, pay attention to his feet at times whenever they're showing pictures of him, and you'll be like, oh, there's the heel again. So, anyways, that is Louis. On Monday, we will finish up lesson 3, which we'll talk about some other absolute monarchs that, again, will obviously pale in comparison to the Sun King. But if you have any questions, again, always feel free to ask, and y'all have an awesome weekend. So, see if I can get this. Oh, there we go. All right. Bye, guys.